Welcome to Tech Intersect. I'm your host, Tonya Evans, and my life and work exist at the heart of law, business, and technology. Yeah, I've earned a few fancy titles and degrees over the years, but the bottom line is I'm a writer, speaker, teacher, and lifelong learner, and I'm really excited that you've joined me on this journey. So what is Tech Intersect? Well, it's authentic, empowering conversations with really interesting guests who demystify complex topics to prepare you for the future, because your future is now. And it exists where law, business, and tech intersect. Get ready to listen, learn, and leverage. Let's get started. In this episode of Tech Intersect, I welcome Stephanie Morillo. She's a content strategist, a writer, editor, and product manager at Microsoft. She's also the author of The Developer's Guide to Content Creation, which seeks to teach program developers and those aspiring to be a dev how to manage their brand as they build. So often, devs focus on the code and the technology, and that's important to be sure. But if you want to translate your project into earning potential, you need a brand. Stephanie's life work focuses on bridging that divide, and she shares actionable items and strategies in this episode that everyone can use to level up. Time to listen, learn, and leverage. So let's get started. So I'm thrilled to welcome Stephanie Morillo to the show today. She holds a master in science and is a content strategist, writer, editor, and manager. She is currently the technical program manager at Microsoft and the author of the upcoming book, The Developer's Guide to Content Creation. It's set to be released on January 28th, 2020, and it's a book for devs who want to consistently and confidently generate new ideas and to publish high-quality technical content, and she's going to tell us all about that today. But this topic is one that is near and dear to my heart because it fits squarely into one of the most important topics that I cover in Tech Intersect: how to prepare yourself for the future of work. And to do so in this economy that exists at the intersections of law, business, and technology. Today, we focus on the business and tech side, and I'm thrilled to connect with you, Stephanie, to take a deep dive into how devs can build as they brand. Welcome.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Excellent. So you have a really interesting and impressive background in writing and editing on the technical content side. So let's start off with kind of your origin story. Share with the audience your background and the background that led to the work that you do today at Microsoft, but also for devs.
Sure. I have a very unique origin story. I did not go to school for computer science. I did not have much of a tech background leading up to eventually making the move into tech. My background is in strategic communications and marketing, and I was working primarily in the nonprofit space for a few years. And it was through that work that I got I had a few interactions with developers, but I really did not understand much about what it was that they did. I
Right.
loved creating content online because I've loved consuming and writing information, sharing information. That's always been a big deal for me. But tech was always a field that I felt was inaccessible. I didn't code at the time. I didn't understand anything about hardware, anything about software. It felt very, very foreign to me. And it wasn't until about 4 years outside of college, I decided that I wanted to learn how to code. And a really good friend of mine took me under his wing and started giving me programming lessons once a week. I was learning Ruby with the hopes of eventually becoming a developer. At that point, it was about 2012. Coding boot camps were emerging. It became very clear to a lot of folks who felt that software development jobs were previously felt really inaccessible, were now starting to become more accessible, more open to people. So it was a really exciting time to learn how to code. And a lot of folks understood software development as a track that would lead to gainful employment, to learning, earning more than just minimum wage. It's definitely earning a living wage that could really impact one's ability to accumulate wealth and pass on and help out their families and their communities. So the impact of learning how to code for me at that particular point in time was, wow, I'll be able to make enough money to sustain myself and then eventually hopefully make enough so I can help my family. And then, when I start a family of my own, be able to kind of make those life milestones, but also helping out my family, be able to balance all of those things and make those
Right.
possible.
That is really, really important because another, when I think there's so many things, all my synapses are firing as you're speaking because there's a lot of there. One, the idea of upskilling in place to figure out how do I make my current expertise relevant in this new economy.
Mhm.
And then also, as you talk about creating not just a job, but a pathway, a track, a career that would sustain generational wealth because
Oh,
there's
yes.
so, when you think about underrepresented communities and starting over again every generation and getting further and further behind, that's one of the many reasons it's so critically important for people to do what you've done. I don't have a technical background either, although I'm usually an early adopter of technology and I'm interested in it. I'm a lifelong learner. I'm drawn to it. And in the same way that you became interested in coding, although you went way further than I did, I need to sit down somewhere and learn how to code. What you've shared with the listeners is really important. One, it's never too late. Two, you can make a pivot at any time that is in a meaningful direction. And so taking your existing background and adding the technical component to that, not being afraid to do that, is a really powerful testimony.
It is, and frankly, it was very frightening. I had a
Right.
lot of I came to programming with a lot of assumptions, and the assumptions were, well, you know what? I wasn't very good at math when I was young because for me, coding was kind of an impenetrable language that required abstract level thinking, and in some ways, frankly, there is a lot of that. If one is really good with logic, if one has a background where they've used logic a lot, programming is really well suited to that just because of how programming languages are structured and how code is structured. Someone who is really comfortable coming up with logical expressions would easily be able to find the parallels with programming. But I came from a creative background, and frankly, a lot of the processes and skills that I possessed at the time, they were hard for me to articulate because I couldn't really tell you how I learned anything that I learned. I learned by doing, and I was really
Right.
interested. I've always been interested in making connections between things that weren't that may not be as obvious to someone else. So when I was learning how to program, it was really difficult because programming is something that's very difficult to learn. Period. Although it is obviously easier for some folks than it is for others, but the entire time I felt quite dumb and I was very much out of my depth, and I wasn't sure if this was going to be the thing for me. And one of the things that exacerbated that particular feeling at the time was that I had been unemployed for about a year, and I actually went through a period of homelessness for about 5 months.
Mm,
So when you are learning how to program with the hopes of getting a job and gainful employment, to be able to enter a career that would hopefully set you up for a lifetime, though all of those sociological issues, compounding that, for me they were very, very real. And
right.
I knew that I wanted to be in a position where I could grow and grow, frankly, in ways that I couldn't imagine. I never worked with developers. I was never entrenched in that space. So I was not just learning the basics of programming. There are also all the parallel skills that people have to learn, in addition
Hmm.
to coding, and then just learning how to navigate the tech space in New York City. Who's who? What do people do? How do they work? It was very educational, but it could be overwhelming at times.
Because you always feel that you're behind in some sense,
Oh,
or that there's
yes.
something missing, right? Or that quadrant where you don't know that you don't know. It always
Yes.
rears its ugly head at the worst possible time. And then doing it in New York City, right? At
Oh,
the
yes.
epicenter of finance and all the movers and the shakers. But you persisted and you pressed forward, and there's something in you that led you not only to empower yourself, but then take it the additional step to empower the very constituents that you felt that you weren't a part of until you
Yes.
buckled down. So talk to me about how you even got to the point that you were led to write the developer's guide to content creation.
So the developer's guide to content creation, I'd been interested in writing a book for about 4 years, a book that would be geared towards software developers. So the interesting thing about my career is that I learned how to code, but I never became a developer or a programmer. I had a bit
Mhm.
of an existential crisis where I realized that, the coding stuff is not fun for me. That's
Right.
what it was. And I said, I don't know that I can sit in front of a computer for 8 hours minimum trying to figure out a piece of code and moving that forward. I felt that there was something missing. And it took me a while to truly get to the crux of what it was that I enjoyed about being in the tech industry. And what I enjoyed was, one, being around software developers and their enthusiasm for the things that they're learning and doing, and two, the times that I was that I faced a problem in my coding journey, writing about them. So when I learned how to
Mhm.
code, my mentor recommended that I'd start a learning blog where I would just write entries about what it was that I was learning as a way of keeping track, almost like a journal, keeping track of everything that I was learning, the problems that I was coming across, and how I was solving those problems. And I really thoroughly enjoyed it because even though learning how to code, there were a lot of frustrating moments, I was able to inject humor and other things to kind of make the process seem a little bit less daunting and a little more colorful. And I realized, well,
Mm.
maybe there's a chance for me to actually write about technology, work in the software development space, and write about tech without actually being on the developer side of the house. So at that point in time, I started looking for jobs at companies that were B2B companies with developers as their main user base. And
Mhm.
I was looking for technical writing jobs or copywriting jobs. And I ended up in a marketing copywriting position for a cloud infrastructure company in New York City. And during my time there, I was responsible basically for writing all of the marketing collateral that we used that explained all of the products that we had for a developer audience. So I learned the importance of what developers appreciate and don't appreciate when it comes to very marketing centered and marketing focused language. I worked
Mhm.
closely with technical writers and editors just to kind of understand how, to understand how they write documentation that's geared for a developer audience. And then I also worked with the product team, and I was actually doing writing for the product itself. So it was
Mm.
basically through the experience of being a writer that was interfacing with all of these different stakeholders, I developed an understanding of what it was that developers like and don't like when it comes to technical content. And that was at the time, I kind of just like put it in the back of my head, and I was just using that information to inform my work. I didn't actually think there was a market for that particular kind of thing. Because for me, frankly, being someone who has always been on the writing side of the house, it
Mhm.
seemed a little obvious. I felt like I wasn't adding anything of value. Okay, this is how you create a blog. This is what you need to do. I thought that was actually, I didn't think that would be interesting to anyone. But when I joined Microsoft and I was a content strategist on their developer advocate team, part of my job was guiding and coaching cloud developer advocates on best practices when it comes to content creation. And these are people who are really well-known technologists. Many of them are really comfortable content creators, but there were a lot of things there were a lot of gaps in their knowledge, and that's only because they never worked in a content role
Right.
before that I was able to fill in. And I realized, well, if developers at this particular level who are already really great content creators need certain things that are kind of foundational and fundamental, I can only imagine what developers who are not in these particular roles, not in developer relations, what they might need. And a lot of developers want really good developer content. They need better documentation.
Mm.
They
Right.
the content is extremely important because that's how they learn. And content, I'm not just referring to blog posts. Really, it could be anything from screencast or podcast or an open source demo hosted on GitHub. It can be, frankly, anything that is meant to be engaged with, any kind of information that's meant to be engaged with and consumed by an audience. And I realized, well, I know that a lot of developers always talk about wanting to have a blog. So why don't I help
Right.
them understand demystify some of the issues or preconceptions that they may have about content, similar to the preconceptions that I had about programming. Why don't I help
Right.
them demystify that, but do more than just demystify, actually make it so that they can build something while they're reading my book. So I wanted to
Hmm.
be able to combine both.
We hope you're enjoying this edition of Tech Intersect. Our conversation will continue in a moment, but first, a word on an exciting opportunity.
The Tech Intersect podcast is released to the public every Friday. But as an Advantage Evans member, you'll receive first listen access and live Tech Intersect Connect video chats. Premium members also receive a copy of my ebook, The Gen Xer's Guide to Upskilling in a Web 3.0 World, and unlimited access to the video chat replays and bonus episodes. My pro members, ready to leverage what they've listened to and learned, receive access to the Upskilling Self-Guided course and VIP group coaching calls. So as you can see, Advantage Evans membership adds substantial value to your podcast experience. And there are 3 ways to take advantage, see what I did right there, of all that the Tech Intersect podcast has to offer. So subscribe now and let's listen, learn, and leverage together.
And now, back to the conversation.
That's fantastic, because being a great developer does not translate clearly into being able to convey that information in a way that the other side, who is involved in learning and growing and trying to find their way through and to the information that they need, there's a method to the madness of that.
Oh, yes.
That is a skill set, and it's a hard skill set that is not often included when someone is focusing just on the code. So that leads me to what I know that you have 3 basic areas that you want to increase the competency and the skill set of those who get your book. So what are the 3 things that devs will learn about optimizing their content so that they go from project to professional, and from professional to a sustainable business, or at least a sustainable dev in their career?
That's a great question. For one, the book will teach developers how to generate new ideas consistently. One of the issues that I've observed with content creation for developers is someone will sit down and say, I have a great idea for a blog post, or maybe 3 or 4 blog posts, but they have not actually thought beyond the initial kind of, spur of the moment ideas, what else they might need for a blog. So I've seen people say, yeah, I'm going to start a blog. And in the beginning, they will generally have quite a bit of content. They might have ideas already that has been cooking for a while and they want to explore. But then a blog hits a certain point where it'll peak, and the developer realizes that, wait, I've been going on inspiration juice for a while. And now that the inspiration juice has run out, I don't actually have anything more to say beyond that to kind of keep things going consistently. So you might find for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, a developer is consistently, by consistently, I mean like at a regular cadence. The cadence might be once a week, once every 2 weeks, 2 to 3 times a week, doesn't matter. But they go from producing regularly to producing infrequently or stopping altogether. So it might go down to once a month, might go to once every 3 months, once every 6 months. And the problem there is that a lot of people, and frankly, I've done this myself, rely on inspiration alone or motivation to get them to kind of push them along. And the truth is that inspiration is really fickle. And you're not always going to be motivated to write something. So we can't wait for those moments where we feel like, okay, we can't rely on emotion alone to get us through creating something that we can sustain over the long term. Secondly, developers know or want to know a lot of things, and a lot of those ideas go discounted. So for example, the idea that I had for this book, I'm going to help developers understand the end-to-end content creation process. I almost didn't write this book because I thought, well, this is stuff that maybe everyone knows. This is not something, it's not rocket science. I have no delusions of grandeur here. But frankly, the fact is that what was common knowledge to me was not common knowledge to everyone else. Had I decided not to write this book would have not been written, and developers would have had to go to various different sources to try to get even to get some of the information that is covered in this book. So I want to help. That's the first thing. I want to help developers identify all of the possible ideas they have that would make for good content. So that's one thing. The second thing is to help developers kind of break down the writing stage into 3 different stages. So one of the misconceptions that occurs with writing is that one will sit down, and again, there's the inspiration-driven myth, that one will sit down and one will hammer out a really awesome draft that will be ready to publish almost immediately. That is not true for any of the novelists that we admire, any of the authors or journalists. no writer, even a writer that has been writing consistently every single day for the last 30 years, will have a 100% perfect first draft. The challenge there is sitting down and actually writing the first draft. And it can be really daunting sitting down and looking at a text editor or looking at word processing software and saying, how am I going to start this? So I break down the writing stages into a planning stage, where I also mention the different types of content and blog posts can be written, and I provide examples of those. And then I also list what are the things developers should be focusing on it during the writing stage. And then finally, the editing stage, because we have to
Right.
refine, we have to fine tune things in order to get them right. So the second thing is breaking down the writing stage. And the third aspect of what developers will learn from reading this book is about promoting their content. So I'm definitely I understand that for a lot of developers, marketing or sales can be something that doesn't feel very good. It feels a little bit icky. It
Right.
feels foreign to them in the way that coding felt really foreign to me. But the truth is that marketing does not have to be something that delivers a bunch of fluff with no value. And marketing today is highly data driven and actually really the fact is that marketing operations is something that has evolved greatly. So things are kind of less about intuition these days and more about using data to better understand what's working, what's not working. So
Right.
that's basically what I want to help developers do next is how to promote their content effectively, how to use different channels to promote their content, and how to continuously use data to kind of refine what it is they're working on.
Yeah, it's so important because, the idea that if you build it, they will come just doesn't it didn't ring true in the 20th century, and it certainly doesn't ring true now. And the fact that people want to really have access to information, but there's an embarrassment of riches,
Yes.
of even where to find it. So, to your point earlier, being able to pull together all of the key content so that people can find it in one place. And also a part of that is even letting people know why this is important and why this really completes the full circle of not only the developer skills, but also effectively communicating that information and in what way. And again, the fact that it's a process, right? It's a skill and it is something that you can do once you have the roadmap. And
Yes.
my understanding of the book, I'm super excited about it, is because you have now provided the roadmap for things that you thought were simple, but they're not simple to people who don't know it, don't do it, and it feels foreign to them. So that's really important.
It was really important to me to make sure that the book was accessible as possible. The
Yes.
fact is that content creation, there are a lot of different ways that I could have gone about this book, and I deliberately kept it light on marketing jargon or concepts, because
Right.
the point of the book is not to turn developers into the next product marketers. It's to help them become better content creators. However, the foundational concepts in the book are things that have been mastered by marketing and communications. And frankly, these are things that the companies that many of these developers are working at, these are the kinds of processes that they're already utilizing on these teams. It's just that developers haven't had the opportunity to really interface with those folks as much or really fully understand those processes. And
Mhm.
it's meant to get them started so that they are they're generating content, once they're really confident about what it is that they've been promoting regularly, then it's a springboard to, okay, I might want to know a little bit more about this, or I want a little more of a deep dive on that. And for that, I was really intentional about making sure that the book is relevant to developers no matter their skill level. And by skill level, I mean how much experience they have with either content creation or marketing or even development. I try to keep those assumptions to a minimum, but I wanted all of the different audiences that I'm speaking to feel that yes, there is definitely something in this book that speaks to me directly, and not just that, I know where to go next. It wasn't enough for me to just say, okay, this is the process, and then here's the next thing. It was more like, okay, this is one chapter where we're talking about writing. Here are some resources that you should look into that will dive into some of these things even further. So I pepper a lot of resources throughout the book for continued reading, for further research, again as a
Right.
way of kind of like inspiring curiosity, getting people curious, and also giving them more access to deeper, frankly, to like deeper dives on some of the content that I bring up in the book.
And I know that the book is a great place to begin, but for those who want that deeper dive, as you said, talk about some of the services that you provide to devs as well.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So one of the things that I'm actually going that I'm it's still very much in the ideation stages, but it's something that I do want to launch in the springtime. I
Great.
am planning on launching kind of like a consulting service where I have
Hmm.
focused strategy calls with developers. Still very much kind of trying to figure out exactly what this is, but I want to start with something really small. I want to just hey,
Right.
30 minutes, you want to sit down and you want to kind of run your idea by somebody. You want some, pointed advice that's tailored to your situation about the blog or screencast or podcast that it is that you want to launch. You want
Right.
to get, you want to do a Q&A with somebody who is on the content side who can better direct you to, what should I do? Where should I go? Those are the kinds of calls that I plan on
Right.
offering developers just as a way of giving people direct access to a content creator who has worked with developers before. So that is definitely something that is on the roadmap.
Yeah, I definitely see that. I see a lot of speaking engagements. But what I have found, and you found your way to the book before I did, I remember doing all of these speaking engagements and all of the consultations, and they're only 24 hours of the day,
Yeah.
right? I remember Arlen Hamilton tweeted about this recently. All of the people who want to pick your brain, eventually you say, you know what, brain, let me do a brain dump. I'm going to do a
Yes.
book and then start here and then we'll talk. Maybe.
Yes.
Right. So I caution you, or not caution, I support you in the desire to get the information, curate it. You have the book, and then the magic will ultimately happen. You'll find your way to that nice cadence and the balance between taking 24 calls a day, right,
Oh, yeah.
versus having the book and doing other things where people can access it 24/7, where you may not have to be directly involved, but now they actually know who an expert is in this field who can take them to the next level. So that's fantastic. And so let's talk about the launch, how people can purchase the book. I will say for Advantage Evans members, I'll drop some additional resources in the full show notes that you'll have access to. Maybe we'll have Stephanie come back and do an AMA and ask me anything
Oh, that'd be
after the book
great.
comes out. And for those who really want to take a deep dive, Advantage Evans members, she's all yours. So we'll work on that after the show and figure that out. But let's talk about the release date and where people can get the book and all of that good stuff.
Absolutely. So the book is currently available for pre-order at developersguidetocontent.com. There are two different versions of the book being sold. One is for individuals. So if this is something that you're the only person that's going to be reading this book, I encourage you to buy that version. But if you work on a developer relations team, a marketing team, or an engineering team that's interested in doing things like exploring things like creating an engineering blog, there's also a Teams version that is sold that is on pre-order, and you can purchase that version for up to 10 people in your team. Another great thing is that a lot of wonderful folks in the community have generously donated 70 free copies of the Developer's Guide to Content Creation for developers from underrepresented backgrounds in technology. There will be a
Mm,
giveaway. Details for the giveaway will go live on January 27th, so it'll launch sometime that week. And again, it'll be, 70 free copies. It's going to be a one-time thing. So if you're interested in that, please follow me on Twitter. My Twitter is Radio Morillo. That's RADIOMORILLO for details. So stay tuned on that. So I'm really excited to be able to do that in addition to sell the book.
we will definitely connect on our resources page. Please follow Stephanie Morillo. You're doing so many wonderful things and you're supporting an important community in this new economy and really helping people level up to go to that next level. So I'm a super fan. Anything I can do to continue to support you, I will. Women of color in tech, all of the things that we're doing specifically, not just within the community, but the impact that it has above and beyond to the larger technology community, and that's what it's really about, right?
Oh,
And
yes.
so, including increasing the tent and
Yes.
the opportunities, and that's most important. I see you, and I love it, and thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
Success in this new economy depends on your ability to navigate the intersections of law, business, and technology. For software devs, that means learning to tell the story of your project with compelling text and media so you can develop your brand as well. And Stephanie shared some real gems for all of us, really, about how to get from the comfort of the familiar to the next level of our personal and professional success. Follow your curiosity and don't let fear get in the way. Stephanie learned to code because she saw that developer jobs were a pathway to gainful employment, to careers, and to sustain generational wealth. But she also learned through that process that software development just wasn't her thing. She was competent, but not inspired. But educating and empowering developers, that made her heart sing, and she's an absolute pro. Now she seeks to demystify for devs the process of creating content for blog posts and online courses, how to launch podcasts and screencasts in order to share what they know to bring technical writing and creations to life. Stephanie has agreed to co host an AMA chat that's Ask Me Anything. So be sure to become an Advantage Evans member for a complimentary pass to this online event and every AMA. And purchase your copy of the Developer's Guide to Content Creation with the link in the show notes. That's all for now. Until next time, continue to shine.
Stay in touch with host Tonya Evans via your favorite social media. On Twitter at Tech Intersect and on Instagram via the handle Tech Intersect. This podcast has been produced by Stephanie Renee for Soul Sanctuary Incorporated.